Do you have that friend or relative or coworker where everything always comes out wrong? They're getting offended easily, they're misunderstanding you, there's always problems and hurt feelings in the relationship. You have just experienced a negative communication climate. Positive communication climate, on the other hand, you feel supported. You feel like you can say almost anything to the person and they're going to understand. You're less likely to misunderstand one another, though it does happen from time to time. Communication climates are established both through the words that we speak as well as our nonverbal gestures and ways of communicating with one another. And we strive to create a positive communication climate in our relationships because it does set the stage for when you do have issues, they're much easier to resolve and handle because you've already laid that groundwork for open communication where you can discuss issues and problems with the other person in a much more transactional manner. So, we're going to talk about communication climates and how to establish positive communication climates. The first step we want to take is to try to be descriptive rather than evaluative with the types of statements we make, especially when we're raising a sensitive point or issue with the other person. You want to take responsibility for your thoughts and your feelings and describe what is going on, what's the scenario, what have you observed, rather than labeling the other person, blaming the other person, accusing the other person. If you'd approach someone and say, "You're always interrupting me," anytime you throw that always statement in and imply that they habitually, perpetually act this way, you're not setting the groundwork for a meaningful discussion. They're just going to get defensive. And if they get defensive, you're not going to get a problem solved. A better way is to take ownership of your own feelings. I feel like my ideas are unimportant when you interrupt me, when you talk over me. Now, okay, that little I feel statement, I feel, I believe, I think, people oftentimes throw that out with an evaluative term after it. I feel like you're being a jerk when you talk to me like that. Okay, yeah, you use the I feel statement, but you are still being evaluatives. So that's one thing that you have to be careful about. The next three go together in my hand: being genuine, being other oriented, having genuine concern for other people. That's immediately setting the stage for a positive communication climate. Empathizing with other people, trying to put yourself in their shoes and look at it from their perspective. That's also creating a supportive communication climate. And finally, being flexible. It's one big, big rule in interpersonal communications. What works with one person is not going to work with another person. You have to learn to adapt based on the individual that you're dealing with. There's no one solution that's going to fix things all the time. In a work situation, this is one I really believe in. Present yourself as an equal rather than a superior. Sound a little bit familiar to that human resources or human relations method where you engage in teamwork or try to make the other person feel good about where they're coming from. There are certain work situations where giving direct orders and telling somebody this is what you need to do and this is how it needs to be done is appropriate. But I think more often than not, if you're trying to create an environment where people want to work for you and where people see themselves as part of a team and not just a cog in a machine, if you can talk about what can we do to fix situations, how can we approach this problem, what can I do to help you, and again, going back to the other ones, be genuine about it. Try to look at it from their perspective. Try to put yourself in their shoes, and you're setting the stage for a more positive communication climate. Assertive communication is part of a positive communication climate. The bad side of that coin is aggressive communication. Now, both of these two forms of communication achieve the same end point. You're standing up for yourself, you're asserting your rights, you're expressing your opinions and your viewpoints, and ultimately you're trying to get your way. Here's the difference. Aggressive communication does this from a non-other oriented perspective. In other words, you don't look at it from the other person's situation at all. If you step on somebody's toes or hurt somebody in the process of trying to get your way, so be it. Assertive communication is other oriented. You're also trying to get your way, but you're trying to look at it from somebody else's perspective. So let's talk about how to do this. There are 3 steps. First of all, describe the situation. This is sometimes the hardest one, but it's really straightforward. Literally, what happened? And can you describe what happened in a neutral way? You acted like a real jerk. Okay, not neutral, that's inflammatory. The other person's going to get mad at you. When you were ignoring my statements the other day, I felt very unappreciated. Okay, you're describing what happened. They were ignoring you, or when you didn't recognize the statements I made, That's descriptive of the situation. So describe what happened and try to say it in such a way that doesn't throw more gas on the fire. Describe it in such a way that just is neutral as you can possibly be. Disclose your emotion. How do you feel about the situation? Again, I feel angry. I feel sad. I feel frustrated. I feel livid. I feel, think of all of those great emotional statements you can make. And then try to put some of those emotions into words. How do you actually feel about this situation? How does it affect you? Does their behavior have a direct impact on you? And disclose that to them. Tell them how this situation impacts you. Finally, listen to what they have to say. Hear them out and make sure that you've understood them appropriately by paraphrasing what you heard back to them. What I hear you saying is that you weren't overlooking my statements, but you were just really busy and didn't have time to get to them. Okay, I'm paraphrasing back to the person what I think they said. Here's an example. Let's say your boss gives you a bad performance review and you don't think you deserve that bad performance review. Even worse, compensation's tied to it, future earnings, promotions, raises, etc. Okay, here is what you don't want to say. You are such a rat. If you or anyone in management ever spend any time on the floor, then you know what really goes on down there and how hard I work. Okay, that may be how you really feel about the situation, but this is not going to get you a raise, and this is not going to get you a promotion, and this may even get you fired. So, and a couple of things let me point out. First of all, calling the person a name, and you can fill in any expletive in place of rat that you want. Nonetheless, it's a label. You're labeling the person, you're evaluating them as a bad person. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. You're also in this statement saying they don't really do their job. Now, even if you feel like they don't really do their job, this is not the best time to accuse them of not doing their job because you're trying to get something fixed. You want a good performance review. Here's a better way of approaching it. First of all, remember using the 3 steps. Describe the situation. This review says I don't do my job well, but I wasn't even aware of having been observed. Okay, literally, that's what happened. You got a bad review, and you didn't know anybody was even down there observing how hard you work. How does it make you feel? I'm frustrated because I think I'm a hard worker and I think I do my job well. Okay, that's how you feel, frustrated. And finally, how does it affect you? Since this is going to affect my future raises and promotions, I'd like to talk more about the review process and how I can work towards a better review or outcome in the future. And that's how it affects you. It's going to affect your promotion, and here's what you want to do to resolve that particular problem. Then you're going to listen to what they have to say back and make sure you understand them by paraphrasing properly back to them. So assertive communication is just one way that you can stand up for yourself, but also maintain that positive communication climate with other people.